Welcome to my podcast, Life with Denise, sharing inspiring conversations and heartfelt wisdom. Follow online at denisepettit.com, YouTube at Denise Pettit, and Instagram at Denise Pettit. You are capable of more than you know. I'm a speech and language pathologist, and here's what I know for certain. You are not yet who you can become. Let's talk about the neuroscience of becoming fearless. How do you see yourself? Hi, this is Life with Denise, and I'm Denise. So how do you see yourself? Not how others see you, not how your parents described you at age 8, not the story someone else wrote about you years ago. How do you see yourself right now in this moment? Because here's what neuroscience has confirmed. It's both thrilling and a little terrifying. Because what the brain sees continually, it believes. That's called neuroplasticity. Early in my career, we were told that there were critical windows of development where if a child didn't acquire certain language or communication skills, the window would close. Neuroscience called this the static brain model. And to some extent, that's true. Those windows do matter. But what we didn't fully understand then, and what the field has had to humbly revise, is that the window never completely shuts. Now we know that the brain keeps remodeling. At 5, at 45, even at 85. Beginning in the 1960s and accelerating through the 1990s and 2000s, researchers began discovering something extraordinary. The brain is not a finished product. It's a living, breathing, constantly remodeling organ. Neurons are the brain's communication cells, and they form new connections based on what we repeatedly think, feel, do, and believe. Old connections that go unused weaken and eventually just prune away. New ones, built through repetition and emotion, grow stronger. This is called neuroplasticity. It means that your brain today is not the brain you have to keep. Most of us are walking around with a brain that was shaped, powerfully shaped, by experiences that we didn't choose. Maybe your family of origin, the messages you absorbed before you even had the language to question them, the fears that were modeled for you before you even knew what fear was. You've heard the phrase, nature versus nurture, but neuroscience now shows us that it's not a competition. It's actually a collaboration. And here's the part that matters. DNA does not mean do not argue. Your genetics are part of you. Your environment and your mind, your repeated thoughts, your stories, your focus, they all trigger your response, or maybe they don't. And epigenetics is a science of how the gene expression is influenced by experience, and it confirms that you're not a prisoner of your biology. You can literally change which genes are expressed through how you live, what you believe, and what you repeatedly practice. So the first question is not just, how do I see myself? It's where did that self-image come from? And more importantly, is it still true? Think about your family tree for a moment. What patterns did you inherit? What fears got passed down the line? You know, generational trauma is a real neurological phenomenon. Fear can be learned, but here's the good news. What's learned can be unlearned. So your job is to figure out where the fear came from. And then you get to decide, does this fear belong to me? Or did I just absorb it? Personally, I have had numerous traumatic life experiences, and I've had to do self-evaluation and reflection to work through emotions and those feelings for healing. Because here's the thing about fear. We're all in a cage, every single one of us. But most of us built the cage piece by piece, layer by layer, year by year, out of experience that told us the world wasn't safe, or maybe that we weren't enough, or that playing small was smarter than reaching for something extraordinary. The question neuroplasticity asks is this: who built those bars? And can you push them out? Well, I can tell you, as a speech pathologist, I worked with what's called narrative constantly. Narrative development is a child's ability to tell you a coherent story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's one of the single strongest predictors of academic success, social competence, and emotional regulation that we have. When a child can narrate their experience, they can organize it. They can make sense of what happened to them. They begin to process the meaning. And this is still true when you grow up. Your brain is, at its core, a storytelling machine. You know, the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that's responsible for decision making, identity, and planning, runs almost entirely on narrative. It doesn't even process raw facts. It processes meaning. And meaning comes in the form of story. This is why writing your story matters. Journaling your feelings. Taking counsel with yourself. Literally sitting down and having an honest conversation with your own mind. Neuroscientists call this expressive writing. And the research behind it is remarkable. There's been so many studies, and this one study by Dr. James Pennebaker at the University of Texas found that people who wrote about their deepest emotions and experiences showed measurable improvements in immune function, lower rates of depression, and better cognitive performance. So, when you write your story, you're not just processing the past, you're literally reorganizing neural pathways. You are deciding what the story means. And that meaning shapes what you believe. Fear comes first, and that's okay. The amygdala, which is that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in your brain's limbic system, that's your threat detection center. It's been scanning for danger since before you were born, and it fires fast, faster than your conscious mind can process. You feel the fear before you even know why you're afraid. So the goal is not to be without fear. The goal is to feel the fear and move anyway. Let's phrase it this way. Fear first, then fun. Because here's what happens physiologically when you do that. When you take action despite the fear, your brain, specifically that prefrontal cortex, starts to override the amygdala's threat signal. And so over time, with repeated exposure, the fear response actually diminishes. The same situation that used to terrify you now starts to feel manageable. And then it feels normal, and then it actually feels boring. That's why the phrase, no guts, no glory, isn't just a bravado, it's biology. And here's a pattern that elite athletes, high performers, and even the most neuroscientifically savvy coaches in the world have figured out, and something I personally have observed as well. Build each run off the previous run. Every small success was a platform for the next one. Stack your wins. Build momentum through repeated power starts. Because every time you accomplish something, even if it's something small, your brain releases dopamine. And dopamine doesn't just feel good, it motivates. It tags that behavior as worth repeating. Don't try to leap from zero to extraordinary. The brain learns through repetition and reward. Daily successes aren't small things. They are the construction material of a new identity. This is why that was then and this is now is not just a platitude. It's actually a neurological truth. The person who struggled last year was operating with last year's neural pathways. Every day that you practice something different, you literally become a different brain. Now you know you can do more than you could ever imagine because you've done it. And the brain doesn't forget. Be careful, be very careful about what you accept as truth. The brain is remarkably uncritical about the information it receives from repeated sources. If you hear something long enough about yourself, about your limits, about what's possible, the brain begins to treat it as fact. It stops questioning, and it starts building its architecture around that belief. The science evolved, our understanding evolved, and that's what years teach you. Stay humble, because the knowledge keeps changing. What we were certain of in 1976 was revised in 1995. What we knew in 2005 was transformed by neuroimaging in 2015. The brain keeps surprising us, so be careful what you accept as permanent truth about yourself, about others, about what's possible. The bars of your cage may be made out of outdated information. This is why the people around you matter so much. This is why the content you consume matters. This is why that internal voice you allow to run unchecked, the critical one, the small one, the fearful one, can quietly dismantle everything you're trying to build. What the brain sees continually, it believes. So what are you showing it? There are two kinds of people. There are the I wish I had people. They're generally miserable. They chose somewhere along the way to let the fear win, to live at the edge of their comfort zone, looking in rather than pushing the bars out. And then there are the I'm glad I did people. They carry their regrets. Well, sure, everyone does. But they carry them as lessons, not life sentences. And they took the chance. They felt the fear and pushed through it anyway. I've sat with patients at the end of their lives, elderly patients that were working through aphasia or dementia, fighting to hold on to language, fighting to hold on to themselves. And in those conversations, in the fragments of story they shared, the regrets were almost never about things they tried and failed. They were about the unlived life, the unsaid thing, the road not taken. Neuroscience backs this up in a fascinating way. Research on effective forecasting is how well we predict how we'll feel in the future. Consistently shows one thing. People underestimate how much they'll regret inaction. The things that haunt us most are not the risk we took that didn't work out. They're the ones we never took at all. Be a glad I did person. Not because it's easier, it isn't. Because it's the only version of your life that you're going to be able to look back on without hollowness. There's a dimension to all of this that neuroscience points toward, but can't fully explain. And I think it deserves to be said. It's faith, not belief that something can happen, because the brain can produce that. That's called optimism. Faith is something deeper. Faith is something deeper. Faith is knowing that it will. It's operating from a place of certainty before the evidence arrives. It's the thing that lets you keep moving when the data says stop. In the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, which is called and known as the faith chapter, it says it this way. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Operating from that kind of deep, embodied certainty activates different systems than anxious hoping does. The nervous system calms, the prefrontal cortex comes online, creativity expands, and the body stops burning energy on threat response and starts investing in growth. Our greatest victories live inside our greatest challenges. The brain that navigates hardship and comes through it builds resilient circuits. Literally, thicker, better connected neural architecture. The struggle is not the enemy of growth. It's the mechanism of it. So here's what I want to leave you with. Push the bars out. Breathe. Keep moving, because motion is the antidote to fear's paralysis. Find what makes you strong. Know your strength. Ask yourself honestly how your decisions ripple out to your family, to the people who are watching you, and to the next generation who will inherit the neural patterns you're building today. Write your story. Take counsel with yourself. Tell the truth about where the fear came from, and then tell it that it doesn't get to run the show anymore. You're not your DNA. You're not your family's history. You're not the story someone else wrote for you when you were too young to argue. You are a brain in the process of becoming neuroplastic, rewritable, capable of more than you have yet imagined. I have watched human beings from their very first words to their very last prove that over and over again. Remember, fear first, then fun. No guts, no glory. That was then, but this is now. Live fearless. It's time. Let's go. Thanks for being with me today. This is Life with Denise. I'm Denise, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Life with Denise, sharing inspiring conversations and heartfelt wisdom. Follow online at denisepettit.com, YouTube at Denise Pettit, Instagram at Denise Pettit. See you next time.